Today, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to start talking about the conditions of purification. Condition is something that you need to fulfill before the deed. So these things, they need to be fulfilled before the purification itself. And we're talking about here wudu or ghusl. And maybe we'll see something about tayammum here too. And we'll see if we have something here about removing najasa also. So we already know what tahara is in the first place. We want to talk about the conditions of purification. We know what purification is, tahara. Four things. Raf'ul hadath, lifting impurity. Wa izalatun najas, removal of filth. Aw ma fi ma'nahuma, or what replaces those two. What's as significant as they are. Aw ala suratihima, or what looks like them. So, Raf'ul hadath is lifting the religious impurity. Religious impurity is big or small. Big impurity, hadath, or small, hadath. Like we said, you're going to remove the big impurity by obligatory ghusl, and you're going to remove the small impurity by a wudu or an obligatory ghusl. Obligatory ghusl is good enough to remove small religious impurity. So first thing was raf'ul hadath, lifting the impurity. The second one is izalatun najas, removing the filth. So that has its own chapter. We have plenty of details coming concerning that, inshallah ta'ala. So we want to talk about the conditions for purification, the things that need to be fulfilled before the purification, meaning things that are not themselves the act of purification, and they need to be fulfilled before the purification for the purification to be valid. The first condition is being a Muslim. Being a Muslim, except in a case, the case of the Jewish or Christian wife. In her case, she has to do a ghusl after her menses or postpartum bleeding in order to be lawful for her Muslim husband. And she's going to do a ghusl in all appearances, in all of what looks like a ghusl, in all integrals and conditions of a ghusl, except the intention. The only difference is going to be that this ghusl of hers does not require an intention. Then if she does complete valid, proper ghusl, excluding the intention, it will be lawful for her Muslim husband to have intercourse with her. And if she embraces Islam after that, she has to redo ghusl. She has to redo the ghusl if she embraces Islam. But not because she was a kafirah. It's not because she was a kafirah that she has to do the ghusl. This is an important detail here. What I'm saying to you here is that kufr is not an impurity. What if a Muslim made a ghusl and then he committed apostasy? So now he's a kafir. And this kafir, he did not do anything that requires a ghusl. He didn't have an ejaculation. He didn't have sexual intercourse. If it were a woman, she didn't menstruate. So then, and what if this person came back to Islam? Then this person would not have to do a ghusl. Not obligatory ghusl here. Because the kufr that the person committed is not itself an impurity. It's not the kufr. It's not the kufr that makes a person have to do a ghusl. It's going to be menstruating or sexual intercourse or postpartum bleeding that makes a person have to do a ghusl. So in the case of this Christian or Jewish wife, if she did a ghusl for her husband, her Muslim husband, for his sake, without an intention, then this is valid. That's what Sheikh Abdullah says. It is valid, meaning it's recognized and it's permissible now for her husband to be intimate with her. But if she embraced Islam, she would have to do another ghusl. Not because of the kufr. It's not the kufr that makes her have to take another ghusl. It's going to be the fact that she menstruated, or the fact that she had sexual intercourse, or anything else that makes a ghusl obligatory. And that now that she embraced Islam, those things were done without an intention. That those ghusls that she did do were done without an intention. So it's not going to be valid for her like that. She needs to do a new ghusl. So let me know if that's not clear for you, please. This is the Shafi'i school we're talking here. In the Hanafi school, yes, the kufr will invalidate. Kufr invalidates the purity, according to Abu Hanifa. Kufr does not invalidate the purity, according to Ash-Shafi'i. The second condition is mental discerning, having tamyiz, which usually happens around 7 lunar years old. If a child or some person has mental discerning, so we're saying child, adult needs mental discerning too. We have tamyiz right now. I'm mumayyiz, you are mumayyiz, even though we're adults. So tamyiz, mental discerning, is a condition for the validity of the purification. So if a child gains this mental discerning, then if he does wudu or ghusl, it will be valid. It's going to be a sunnah ghusl though, because just a child doesn't need to do a ghusl yet. But before that, it won't be valid, except the case of the guardian who took the child to Hajj or Umrah. If the guardian took the child or crazy person to Hajj or Umrah and did the wudu on this ward's organs, this child or this crazy person, his guardian, did the wudu on his organs and made the intention on his behalf. When he put the water on his face, he says, now I'm doing wudu on this ward of mine, for example. Then that's valid even if it's a little baby and even if it's a crazy person. And then the guardian can take this non-discriminating person around the Kaaba. And then that will be counted as a sunnah for that non-discriminating person. Otherwise, a non-discriminating person, a non-mentally discriminating person cannot engage in the purification that lifts the impurity, cannot personally engage in the purification that lifts the religious impurity. The third condition is removing anything that blocks the validity of the purification. Any barrier, like nail polish. This blocks the water from reaching the nail. And some people have a question about something they call, what do they call it? They supposedly invented some sort of polish that they say it allows the water vapors to get through. La. We don't make wudu with water vapor. We make wudu with water. Or anything else that's blocking the water from getting through. Your clothing doesn't block the water from getting through. You could make a wudu or a ghusl right through your clothing. That's how you're going to clean the dead Muslim. Just going to put a towel over the aura of this dead Muslim, so to make sure that the aura doesn't appear, and then you can pour the water right over the towel. It's going to go right through and it's going to flow over the body. But this polish that I just told you, it will block the water, and also other substances like some sorts of oil, because water and oil don't mix. and paint. But there's two kinds of preventers, if you want. Two kinds of preventers. Things that block the purity, the purity, the act of purification, I mean. One is a physical one, like what I just told you, and another one is a religious one. The physical one blocks the water from reaching the part that's being washed. The religious one is menses and postpartum bleeding. Menses and postpartum bleeding, they defy purification. So it is not possible for a woman who's actively having such vaginal bleeding to perform a valid ghusl or wudu even. Just like a man cannot make wudu while he's actually urinating. It wouldn't be valid. Because this defies the wudu in the first place. So this woman needs to be not menstruating and not having postpartum bleeding for the validity of her purification, wudu or ghusl. It's going to defy wudu and ghusl, this menses or postpartum bleeding. But you should know, if a woman wants to get into the state of ihram for hajj or umrah, but she's menstruating at the moment, it's still sunnah for her to do a ghusl. And someone might be confused here and say, why? How can you call it a ghusl if she's menstruating? It's not a ghusl. It is a ghusl in appearance. It appears to be. We're calling it a ghusl based on what it appears to be. Just like we said about the Jewish or Christian wife of a Muslim. So this menstruating or postpartum bleeding woman who wants to get into the state of ihram for hajj or umrah, it's sunnah for her to do a ghusl. So is it going to be a valid ghusl? Not in the meaning that she can pray because she has menses or postpartum bleeding. But it's going to be valid with the meaning that she did a sunnah. She did the ghusl 100% how it looks to be without the intention, of course. There's a different intention here. It's not an intention of lifting impurity because she can't. So rather, this is a ghusl that looks like a ghusl, but meaning is done like a ghusl, but it will not make her able to pray. But she will get the sunnah. She will get the sunnah. She does that ghusl and then she makes her intention for ihram. And we said that the physical prevention is a barrier that stops the water from reaching the part. And this is whether we're talking about a washed part or a wiped part. A washed part or a wiped part. Ghusl only has washed parts, no wiped parts. Wudu has washed parts and a wiped part. So if there were something that blocks the wiping upon the head, blocks the water from being wiped upon the head, then this is not valid. So we're talking about some kind of fat or grease in the hair or wax in the hair that's going to block the water. Ink, the mere trace of ink does not block the water from reaching the skin. As opposed to, what can I call it? A glob of ink. That could very well block the water from reaching the skin if you had a glob of ink on your skin. But just a trace of ink, like you wrote on yourself with a pen, that's not going to stop the water from getting to the skin. As for the tattoo, that will be mentioned later when we talk about najasa. Now we're talking about conditions of purification. And since we're talking about what blocks the organ, the washed or wiped organ, then you should know, you should take a benefit here that actually that there are things that are wiped sometimes. The head is wiped, the hoofs are wiped, and if you have a cast, then your cast could be wiped according to details. So the head is wiped, the hoofs are wiped, and uh, the cast is wiped for a person who has a broken bone, for example. Okay, that's valid purification. Wiping on this cast or these hoofs. But you should know that there's a rule. Whenever you have something that's wiped, then it's not valid to put something on top of it and wipe that. Whenever you have something that's wiped, then it's not valid to put something on top of that and then wipe that. That's the rule. So if you had a cast and you had to wipe on the cast, then you don't put something on top of that and then wipe on that. Or you had hoofs and you put your hoofs into your shoes. Don't just wipe on top of your shoes. You need to wipe on those hoofs themselves. Because you can't wipe on something that's on top of something that's wiped. Even when it comes to wiping the head, it is narrated from the Prophet ﷺ that he wiped over his turban, but when he wiped over his turban, he still wiped the front of his head. So if you wanted to wipe over your headgear, male or female, wants to wipe over the headgear, then you still need to, for example, get the front of your hair or front of your head. So you're going to push that turban back, or even kufi, doesn't have to be a turban. Push it back just to expose the hair at the over top of the forehead. Or if it's sister, she might just, pull her scarf so she can slide her finger under there to make sure she touches that with the wet finger. And from there, then you can wipe over your headgear. But you cannot wipe over your headgear in a way that you don't wipe any of your head. That's not valid. Now, is there a way that a person could wear hoofs on top of his hoofs? Hoofs on top of hoofs? Yeah, there's a way. Like if the inside hoofs are ripped. He has some hoofs on. There's a hole in them or a rip in them. And then he puts some hoofs on top of those. Then it's valid to wipe on those on top, because the ones underneath are not suitable anyway. Or if you wiped on your upper hoofs with the intention to make the water get down into the lower hoof, and it does actually, then that's valid too. So we're saying you're wearing hoofs, and then you put something on top of your hoofs. So now you have a barrier on top of your hoofs. Let's say they are hoofs. Hoofs on top of hoofs. Then if you wipe on this top one with the intention of the moisture reaching the bottom one, and it actually does, then that's valid. And there's some other details there. The fourth condition is to let the water naturally flow on the part to be washed. Naturally flow. Yani the water flows naturally, normally. As opposed to what? As opposed to wiping. You can only wipe a wiped organ in purification, or a wiped spot. Anything else, you have to wash it. Washing means to let the water flow over it. So when you wipe your head in wudu, you're not going to be making the water flow over it. That's washing, which is valid though. If you washed your head in wudu, that is valid. But that's not sunnah. That's not the command from the Quran. The command from the Quran is to uh, wipe the heads. Wipe, that is. The command of the Quran is to wipe. So you're not going to wash, although that's valid if you were to. So the water has to flow over the washed part, even if it flows by your rubbing, but as a result of your rubbing, as a result of your pushing the water, still valid. Okay. What's an example of something that's valid also? If you had a tub, let's say there's a small amount of water in this tub, and you want to do a ghusl in this small amount of water, and you sat down in the tub, so your lower half is under the water and your upper half is up over the water, and then you made an intention for ghusl. Now your lower half is valid for sure. And what about your upper half? What are you going to do here? What you're going to do here is just slide down so your feet come out of the water and then your torso goes under the water. Without separating from the water completely, keeping yourself in that little bit of water, you're going to slide down so that your torso and head and arms and shoulders go under the water while your feet comes up out of the water, but your feet's already valid. This is valid. This is valid ghusl here. That's flowing water. And what's valid also? Just pouring water a little bit at a time, little bit at a time, little bit at a time. You might need that sometime. If you are in a scenario or a situation where it's not easy to do a ghusl and you need to do a ghusl, you don't have a shower head over you, you don't have a waterfall or a fountain to stand in, maybe all you have is just a regular old sink, then what can you do? Maybe you don't even have a cup. So as if you're going to make wudu on your whole body. I mean, put the water in your hand, bring it to your face with an intention. You don't have to start with your face though for a ghusl. And then again to your head, and then it's going to run down your neck a little bit. You can rub that too, and rub that water, push it as far as you can push it so that it's flowing, because you need to complete this ghusl. And then you can do your arms like wudu. For example, you're going to do your whole arm all the way up to your shoulder, get your armpit, etc., etc. Somehow you're going to get that water all the way down your back, etc. That's a valid ghusl, even if you didn't take your clothing off. And the fifth condition is to use purifying water. Purifying water means water that renders other things pure. So how would it be purifying? What makes it purifying? What makes it purifying is that it has yet to be used. It's not been used for any purification, nor has it been changed so drastically that you don't call it water anymore. Those are your two cases. When the water is not going to be purifying either, it changed so much that you don't call it water anymore, or it's been used. And by being used, it loses its purifying power. Somebody already made wudu with it. Can't use it again. Yes. So that's a condition, using purifying water. How do you know that your water is purifying? You're going to judge it as purifying as long as you don't have reason to say otherwise. For example, you traveled and you went to the house of your family and they weren't home, and you needed to make wudu so you can pray, but alhamdulillah, fortunately, they left water on the porch. There's some water sitting on the porch there. So then you say, my family, they accept for me to use this water, or else I wouldn't be able to use it. They didn't accept. Good thing they accept for me to use this water. I'm not going to make wudu with haram water here, which would still be valid though. And then you're not going to say, maybe they used it. Maybe. No, just you're going to use it. That's all. So when we talk about the water changing so drastically that you don't call it water anymore, what kind of change are we talking about here? We are talking about color, taste, and smell. Any one of those. Doesn't have to be all of them. If it changes so drastically that you don't call it water anymore, then it's not valid for purification. While if you still call it water despite its change, then it is valid for purification, like the swimming pool with the chlorine. Because that liquid in the swimming pool with the chlorine, you still call it water. Anyone would. It is still water. It didn't stop being water. An example of something that stopped being water is like you heated up some water and put a tea bag in there, and then it turned brown. Now you don't call this water. You call it tea. Or instead of a tea bag, you put some instant coffee in there, or you put some Kool-Aid in there, for example. So this is what it means to be changed. And more specifically, we're saying that this water can't change by something that mixed with it. It is possible for water to change and you can still use it, if we want to be exact. It is possible for water to change and you can still use it. Which is if the water changed by something in its pathway or something in its spot. It's just its spot where it's settled. There's water settled somewhere, a pond, for example, is settled somewhere. Then you go up to it and you find there's stuff in there. And the smell is funny. And you wouldn't want that to get in your mouth. And looks kind of nasty. It's mossy. That's what happens when you're a city boy. You don't like those things. You can still use this for purification though. Because in this case, this water changed by something in its own vicinity. Or changed by something in its pathway, like rusty pipes. But if it changes by... not but. Also, if it changes by something that's not actually in the water, then you can still use this water. Like there's something next to the water and therefore the water smells like that. This has no effect. This is still purifying water. And if there were something in the water that does not mix with the water, then you can still use this water even if it changes. Like there's a stick in the water or a rock. And this stick or rock, it does not fuse with the water. It just sits there. But it's starting to change the water. Now you see it's turning green. Now the water smells like a stick. Still, you can use this water for purification. Or the water smells like wood, for example, or like a tree. You can still use this water for purification because even though it changed by something that does not mix with it. So let's look again. Let me repeat for you. Cases of the water changing and you can still use it. It changed by something in its pathway or something where it settles. Or it changed by something not in it, just something close to it. Or changed by something actually in it, but this stuff that's in the water does not blend with the water. It just maintains its own presence, like a rock or a stick. In all these cases, if the water changed, you can still use it for purification. What's examples of stuff that falls into water and changes the water? Blending with it, that is, like sugar and tea and coffee and milk and salt and flour. Yes. But there is still something that you could put into the water, even on purpose. It might fall into the water, or you might even put it on purpose, and it does blend with the water, and it does change the water, but you can still use the water for purification. What's that? Sea salt. That's one. There's two things: sea salt and soil. If you put sea salt in the water, even on purpose, and then it dissolved into the water, this water is still purifying, even if you can't drink that water. Because the sea salt is like ice. Sea salt, not mountain salt, not ground salt or earth salt. Sea salt is like ice. How is it like ice? It's like ice because it's created from the water and it dissolves into the water. Like ice is created from water and dissolves into the water. So sea salt, no matter how much you put into the water, as long as it's still water, actually, then you can use it for purification, that water. And the other thing is soil. Soil, if you put it into the water, it only makes the water murky. And as long as it doesn't become mud or clay, you can still use this water for purification. Like, I'll give you an example. Let's say there was heavy rains and you had a yard, for example, or maybe you were in the woods and the ground is saturated with water, saturated, full. And then you stepped on the ground, not on the cement. You stepped on the ground, and then let's say your foot went down, and then water came up, and this water came up brown. So now this brown stuff right there, what do you call that? You're going to call it water. Still going to call it water. And though you can see that it has been evidently changed, it exactly has the color of soil. In this case, you still can use this water and you're still going to call it water. So that's valid for purification. And this water, since we said it has to be purifying water, because you want to use it for purification, then that means that it is pure, not contaminated with najasa. So if it's a little bit of water that got najasa in it, you cannot use that water even if it does not change. And if it's a lot of water that got najasa in it, then you can still use this water as long as it didn't change. I think those two cases right there about the filth in the water are clear for you. But if you have a question, go ahead, please. Alhamdulillah. Now, if an exempted filth falls in the water, excused filth falls in the water, then as long as the water didn't change, you can still use this water. Like, for example, there's flies in the water. That example, the scenario I gave you, you went to your family's house and you needed to pray. Nobody was home. But fortunately, they left some water outside on the porch. And this family of mine, they do accept for me to use this water, so it's not haram. Let me get this water. Oh, snap, there's flies in this water. There's like 2 or 3 flies dead floating around in this water. Can I still use this water for purification? Let me look. This water has not changed. It's still just like as if the flies weren't in there. It hasn't changed. But the dead fly is najasa, and it is a small amount of water. So is it najasa? The answer is no, it's not najasa, because Those dead flies in that water are excused filth. They are filth, but excused. Excused filth means does not contaminate. So you can still use that water if you want. You can take the flies out and then use that water for purification. But if there's so many flies in there that it makes the water change color or smell, I don't think you want to taste it. But even the taste, if it changes because of that, then it's najasa. You can't use it. We already said that you can't use water that's been used already. You can't use water that's been used already, like what? Uh, Someone might say, I can't use water that's been used already. Okay, so if a Muslim man or woman used water for wudu or ghusl and managed to collect that water, I can't come after him and use that water for purification because they used it already. Correct. Okay. But what about a child who's not obligated to pray? Since he's not obligated to pray in the first place, can I use his water? No, you can't. That's used water too. Ah, okay. What about if someone follows the Hanafi school? And in the Hanafi school, you don't actually need an intention for wudu. So what if a Hanafi made wudu without an intention and managed to collect all that water? Since he made a wudu without an intention in the Hanafi school, and that's not valid in the Shafi'i school, can I use that water? No, you can't use that either. Why? Because it's used. Oh, okay. So then means like that Jewish or Christian woman who did a ghusl for the sake of her Muslim husband. I can't use that water either. That's right. Can't use that water either. Or the water that was used to wash a dead Muslim. So this water then you want to use for purification, you're going to make sure that there was no najis that got into there. We just talked about that. So that covers the chapter, in summary, the chapter of the conditions of purification.